lovely people. My name is Anne Leslie.
My name is Jennifer Winnicrest.
And my name is Faith O'Peel.
And
we are Out of Band.
So we're back for episode 2. And delighted to be here. Episode 1 was us putting ourselves out there, a bit of a pilot adventure to test the water and see what happened. And we are kind of bowled over by feedback. Sorry, I got background noise here. This is like working from home. But yeah, we were bowled over by really warm feedback that we got from people in our networks, people from outside our networks, saying thank you for being honest. And the comment that kept on coming back again and again was thank you for the authenticity, loving what we're seeing. We love that it's raw. We love that it's real. And that's what we wanted to do from the outset, was be here without pretense. And that's what we're going to make sure we keep on doing going forward. So today's conversation, we've themed around this idea of keeping up appearances. The three of us are going to be diving into what does that mean in our day-to-day work and in our lives? How does it impact us? What the kind of connotations are in terms of leadership, and the impact actually in terms of appearances, behaviors, progression. What holds us back? And I'm just going to throw it open to both of you, Faith and Jennifer. So when we talk about appearances, what does that mean for you? Either of you jump in terms of appearances, the pressure it puts you under, the protection it gives you. What are appearances and keeping up appearances in your work and in maybe even in your personal lives?
Well, one thing I want to add, by the way, to your excellent introduction is that we're not just going to give like really bad examples or anything. We're also going to try to give solutions from our point of view. That being said, keeping up appearances, that is a hefty title. And it's interesting, though, because as we all know, cybersecurity is a rather male-dominated world, meaning that you have to deal with like a male-dominated culture. So the influence it has had on me, at least in the last 10 plus years, is that I kind of had to make myself a bit more harsh, a bit more putting myself out there, a bit more dominant, I would say. I mean, I've studied IT for over 9 years due to the freaking education system in the Netherlands, which is kind of interesting. But I remember having to develop like a really thick skin because of, for example, the jokes, or because of, for example, the comments that were made that men, for example, do not necessarily find very offensive or very harsh, but quite normal actually. While I was like, what did you just say? Did you really just mention that? So yeah, I definitely had to develop a thicker skin and not put myself like emotionally out there as I normally would have.
Yeah.
What about you, Faith?
The same thing, right? I felt that I had to. I'm only human, right? I want to fit in. I want to also maybe be liked, not really liked, but I want to be in an environment that makes me happy or makes me bring my authentic self. So sometimes I felt that I had to act in a certain way or talk in a certain way to just try to fit in. And yeah, that's what keeping up appearances means to me. It's just not being myself 100%. It's just trying to fit into the norm of the society that I find myself in, and not necessarily how I would personally carry myself out.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, one of the things that I found, much less so recently, but you spoke about your authentic self, and I definitely wasn't my authentic self for the vast majority of my life. But I can't say it's necessarily anybody's fault, right? It was just kind of the product of circumstance. And if I'm able to turn up now and be more authentic, it's because I've lived through things that have forced me to change for the better.
Yeah.
And I'm able to say more with more conviction now that I know who I am as my authentic self. But there's a flip side to it, which is now I know who I am. I'm much less tolerant of situations and contexts and people who don't allow me to be who I am. And I rebel against it, and I try and remove myself, I think, from situations where I feel pressure on me to not be what I am. And I value, there's a lot of flip sides to it. I value people and contexts who allow me to be what I am without judgment, right? It doesn't mean that they like everything about me. They mightn't necessarily agree with what I think, but they don't reject me for my difference. And that's a real value that I found in people and in the environment that I'm in more recently, that my difference is not a cause of exclusion, where it had been in the past. But because I'm more,
Yeah, is that because you're more open about it, or is that because of the way that the environment itself is, or why do you feel right now more accepted?
I think there are two things. I think there's the context, right? The context is definitely, and I'd almost say the context is like a hygiene factor, right? You can't be yourself unless the context around you is willing to permit it. But there's an element definitely from me, which is I am more confident in myself. I think I like myself more, which is, I grew up in a culture where liking yourself was like a cardinal sin. If you said that you liked yourself, or that you in Ireland, saying to somebody or about somebody, oh my God, you love yourself, it's a terrible insult, right? And yet what we're realizing as we become sort of more evolved, that self-care and being kind to ourselves is not a sin. It's actually, the foundation for being okay with yourself, so that you can be okay and good with others. But I had to unlearn everything that I had learned growing up, this unspoken belief that being in any way kind to yourself was a bad thing. And I had to unlearn that, relearn a new behavior, a kind of a new belief system. And now I'm more confident in turning up and being open and being less abrasive and less volatile, because I am the way I am. I still have inner work to do. I still have work to improve, but I don't dislike myself. And I think probably deep down, I disliked myself for quite a big portion of my life.
Yeah, that's interesting, actually. Yeah, in the Netherlands, we don't necessarily have that distinctive culture where we are not allowed to like ourselves. I'm using quotations here because free interpretation. But what I did notice when I had the education, and I went through like conforming to a more masculine dominant way of approaching the world. And then I went into my first full-time job, which was high pressure environment with a lot of external factors that, for example, pushed you to go more to the limit, to go more like, okay, yeah, I will do this extra work for you. I will be more flexible with that. And then ending up with like 60 to 70 work week hours. It took a while, and it took a heavy impact on my life to actually stop, think about things, and actually say, sorry, but this is not what I want to do anymore. And drop that kind of appearance as well, that I'm no longer okay with putting others forward or putting others first, but actually just thinking about myself also a little bit.
Yeah,
Boundaries.
I think I also come from that type of background that Anne is talking about, whereby you're always thinking of everyone else but yourself. You're always thinking of, okay, so what will happen if I don't do this? My brothers won't have this, or if I don't do this, someone else is not going to have it. But you're not thinking of how that actually impacts you. And over the past few years, I've actually had to learn to be, sorry to say, but selfish It's not really selfish, but
Yeah.
I've learned to care about myself and about my well-being instead of always trying to care about everyone else's well-being and putting myself in the sidelines.
And
So,
that's
yeah.
really interesting. Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is super interesting, right? This kind of, we're brought up, I think, as girls, is that we're there maybe to keep the peace. We're there to nurture. And there's nothing wrong with nurturing other people, right? But it's again about boundaries. Where are you on the spectrum between being a good person, helping other people, and allowing yourself the space to be you and mind yourself and preserve your own energy and, you know, look after your own well-being. And I think sometimes we're kind of pushed to the spectrum of forgetting ourselves.
Yeah.
But it manifests, you know, we were kind of talking about this in our personal lives. Jennifer, you touched on it in the work context. But a lot of what we manifest as adult behaviors in our professional lives are the product of things we internalize and learn when we're kids.
Yeah.
I've had conversations recently where somebody who I know wants to help me has been saying, I feel you're holding back. You know, I'd really love to see you take a stab at something. And I'm kind of going,
we don't risk.
Yeah, you know, and we're not brought up to take risks, right?
No, if you do something, you need to do
so
it perfectly,
natural.
And otherwise it's done. You just don't pick it up anymore.
Plus, for me, for example, I had a lot to lose by risking stuff, right? I would risk something and then, then what? I lose my job, I lose everything, and who'll take care of me? I cannot just risk any time. So
it's sort of risk. What are we risking? Losing. Are we losing face? Are we losing sometimes relationships? Right.
The financial impact, independence.
Financial.
Yeah, for me it was mostly financial, right? And face also.
Yeah.
The sense of jeopardy, right? The sense of jeopardy of what are we risking by manifesting a behavior that's different to what is expected. And again, right, that feeds into appearances. So when we do something, I know, do either of you have sort of good stories about when you maybe did something that wasn't expected, or you hesitated and then didn't do the thing that was maybe contrary to the norm? Have you got sort of life stories of things that either have gone either direction, right? Where you rebelled against the norm, or you kind of went, well, actually, no, do you know what? I'm going to play it safe.
Well, for me, the whole going into IT and going into cybersecurity is going against the norm. Like I left high school, however you want to call it, depends on the system that you grew up in. But I left high school with a cultural and historical profile background, meaning that I was very good with art, I was very good with history, geography, any of those type of courses, basically. I wasn't very good at like all the technical stuff. And even worse, I have dyscalculia, meaning that I am horrible with numbers. But I liked computers. I loved computers. My father always had like the latest stuff at home and always let me play with it whenever he was done with that. So for me, going into IT was like that big leap of faith, which caused me a lot of anxiety during my study years, because I was always the one that had to catch up just a little bit more. But still, it's a risk that I took, and I'm happy that I took, because I love my job right now, and I'm happy also to see that you don't necessarily need to be the most technical if you don't want to be within our field, in order to actually have like a really awesome, cool job and really make a successful life for yourself.
Yeah. And for me, I guess it's just I ask questions. I just ask questions before I will do what I'm told, but and that is completely not in my culture. So the fact that I ask questions is completely not in my culture. So that's, I think, something that's me going against the current. But with time, I understood that if I just take it and take it and take it, there's no one else who's going to fight for me or ask those questions. So Why should I be doing something that doesn't make sense?
Yeah.
I ask questions.
Totally. And it's, I mean, what you're talking about there, Faith, basically is saying, you know, it's staking a claim to your space, right? Because what I learned is that unless I staked a claim to my place and space in the universe, other people have a tendency to like literally steal your oxygen, right? They will take up the space that you leave them take. And again, I was talking about earlier, you know, unlearning behaviors. When I started to change how I was turning up and putting boundaries, people don't like it straight away.
Yeah.
And some people
tend to get annoyed.
Yeah. But the people who stick around, they you know, I found that people, their noses might be put out of joint temporarily, but the people who are worth hanging on to, they get used to it. And the people who don't, they're not such a big loss anyway.
Are you really gonna miss them?
No. What I actually realized was those kind of people brought me noise. They brought me no joy. They brought me noise. And I'm better with less noise and some more inner peace. So
Yeah,
that's a good summary. So we've been speaking now about like keeping up appearances and changing behaviors. Like, are there specific traits that you kind of taught yourself to exhibit more outwardly, to make a stand, and how did people respond to that?
So I learned, I kind of hate the expression finding your voice because it sounds really cliched, but I was super quiet. Like people sort of look at me now going, oh, you know, you're very confident, whatever. I learned confidence. I spent 35 years cowering inside, being shy and being kind of ashamed, and I have nothing useful to say. So I unlearned things to learn to be confident, and I learned to use my voice. So people sort of say, oh, you know, you're really good at speaking. And I learned that. I don't think I was born with that. And I think the biggest accelerator of sort of my liking myself more, having better relationships with people and having a better career, my biggest accelerator has been the use of my voice in different scenarios. As a way of influencing people, as a way of communicating my opinions, my values, actually, I was want to say my values. Because I think getting confidence about the kind of person I am, what matters to me, and the things that I think are important, which are humility, integrity, honesty, authenticity. I'm not ashamed anymore to stake it, you know, put a line in the sand and goes, I believe that these things are important. And using my voice to say that, that's been the biggest change I think that I've made, is being a little bit noisier.
That's really great. Yeah.
And for me, it's been learning to speak about what I have done or what I have achieved. For me, it's in the beginning, I used to think this is more of bragging, right?
No.
My work is just supposed to speak for itself. But when I entered rooms with guys in the team, you'd hear them saying, I have done this, I have done that, even though it's been a teamwork. I'm the one who did this. And I'm like, no, you didn't, man. I was there. But, you know, I thinking of myself and saying what I have done has been a really unnatural thing for me to do, but I am learning it and I continue to learn it. And I think that's a very useful thing to know, how to promote yourself and put yourself out there.
Because if you don't promote yourself, who will? I mean, you will probably have some sponsors amongst your colleagues or amongst your friends or whatever who will always advocate your activities and your progress, but that's not always the case. So if you don't have that and you don't speak up, who will notice what you've done then?
Yeah. And the second thing actually that I have had to try to get used to is not being liked.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
because because I don't know, I'm only human, and I'd like to be liked, right? But I found out that you can maybe competence and likability don't really fit in the
Yeah.
same sentence, at least for me. So I have tried to reduce the, I don't want to say need, but I have the want to be liked, and just wing it.
That's totally relatable, like totally relatable. I think I spent, again, the vast majority of my life trying to fit in a need to be liked, because being rejected was just like, I can't cope with this. But the need to be liked, yeah, again, it's sort of, it drives the types of behaviors as boundaries, right? How much are you willing to accept to be liked, particularly in a professional context? You know, there's often, we kind of conflate this thing that if I need to be liked, it means I have to be agreeable. But
which in most cases, it is also perceived as.
Yeah.
People will like you if you say yes to them. Most cases.
Absolutely. And yet we're told over and over again that great cultures, and, you know, in companies that succeed, we need diversity of thought, we need cognitive diversity. But that, by definition, means we're different. And it means not only that we have different backgrounds and we come from different places with different skill sets, but it means that we are willing to entertain the idea that we can disagree, and that disagreements can be constructive. And yet, we really struggle, I think, with having the ability to disagree but not jeopardize the relationship. Like, I can like you, but I don't have to agree with you all the time. But it doesn't mean that the two can't coexist. I can still like you. Just, I respect that you have a different opinion.
But that's the thing, like in a professional setting, most of the cases, if you want to build relationships, if you want to build lasting progress, it is usually better on the short term, not on the long term, but on the short term, to be agreeable, to say yes, to be liked, because that's what gets you further normally. In the long term, it hurts yourself, because it basically allows you to step over every freaking boundary that you have. I mean, this is not the topic for today, but if you have had, for example, burnout, you will know what I mean. And that is also something, when you really learn that no is also perfectly a good answer.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. But I think just on that topic, right, we had said, I'll put the caveat in again, we've said in episode 1, this is not a gender soapbox, and it's not, okay? But the fact is that gender is nonetheless a topic, in the sense that it comes in as a parasite in professional situations, again, with how it drives behaviors, perceptions, people's biases, and how they're reading situations. And I have noticed that when I exhibit a behavior that I'm modeling on something I have seen a man I admire do, you know, how a man has handled a professional situation and it's got to a good outcome. When I've modeled that behavior, and okay, maybe I haven't done it perfectly, but you know, that I have tried to emulate something that I have seen work. When I do it as a woman, the result is not the same.
No.
And the feedback that I get on it is, wow, why were you so abrasive?
Yeah.
Wow, you know, that wasn't like you. Is there something wrong? It's like, no, I just, you know, discipline and focus. We haven't got much time, people. We need
Why are you being bossy?
Why are you being bossy?
Or in worst case scenario, don't be such a bitch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, I haven't got a solution to that, but I think about it a lot, because, you know, I sort of introspect on, well, how could I have managed that situation differently? You know, did I do it wrong? But it's just a fact that I see that behaviors that I see in some colleagues that are effective in those situations, when I try and emulate them, it doesn't seem to sit very well, because it's not my place to behave like that.
like even the mode of communication, right? Do you sometimes feel that you need to be a little extra nice to before you actually ask someone to do something?
I mean, the most famous example of that is like when a man and a woman write the same type of email with the same type of request.
I have read some emails.
Is so like really direct, doesn't spend like 4 or 5 seconds on really typing it out. The woman spends 20 minutes on rewriting an email with like, please, can you do, would you consider, I would appreciate.
That's me, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember coming into one of the teams, and I read an email by one of my colleagues to the manager, to our manager. And for me, it was, that is so rude.
Yep.
And I was, I can't even imagine myself writing it that way, because someone will just tell me I'm rude, or maybe it's just in my head.
Well, again, I think it's like conditioning, right? I don't think I'm alone in this. Conditioned to be polite, conditioned to accommodate other people. And, I've had sort of coaching in a professional context and saying, yeah, you need to step up your leadership capability. You need to be assertive. I'm kind of going, yeah, okay. But when I do, it doesn't always go very well.
It's not very well received normally.
So, and there's a lot of stuff circulating on the internet at the moment about this. There's a great meme, right, where a man is perceived as a leader, a woman is bossy. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think there are a few more.
A man is persistent, a woman is nagging.
Yeah.
A woman is difficult, a man is telling the truth.
Or a woman is pushy, a man is ambitious.
So these kind of things, right? And I'd love to live in a world where that is gender neutral, and where, if we're having a debate about an idea, I can express it and debate it and argue about it, about the idea, right? Not about power, about getting to the best outcome, about getting to the best idea possible, without my gender coming in distorting that argument. Because it does happen, right? Where the quality of my competence or the idea I have, if it was somebody identifying as a man, vehicling that idea, the argument and how the interpersonal dynamic happens would probably be very different.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, that's a big topic. It's sort of maybe in our lifetime we'll get to a world where we've resolved it. But yeah.
Well, if we consider that point of view, then like we've complained about it, or at least we've addressed the issue. What would you, in an ideal situation, like to see in practice, so that these kind of differences in attitude and the way it's perceived or received, how would you like to see that addressed?
Sorry, Faith, you go ahead. No, I was pondering.
I think we need to, and this has been said, we need to rethink which qualities are for a good leader or for a good person, because currently the qualities of competence, for example, confidence, not competence, confidence, that's something that doesn't come naturally with women, right? We tend to be humble, we tend to be a little more reserved, and that automatically eliminates us from leadership, because you're supposed to be confident, you're supposed to be more loud, you're supposed to be assertive, and that's not natural for us. So if we rethink the qualities that are supposed to be used when deciding who is a good leader, then maybe we would have more women in our positions, because that's the qualities that they have can be actually used to gauge them instead of masculine qualities.
I mean, I fully agree with that. I want to give one side note to that then, because you mentioned assertiveness and the fact that women don't necessarily have that quality. I kind of disagree. And I want to use you as an example, because I know you in your work, and you are the type of person that always takes the lead into like certain activities. You are always the one that takes, that says, yes, let's do this and let's set this up. So I do think that we as women do have those type of aspects.
But we learn them, right? We learn
them, and we usually have to, I would almost say, exaggerate them for ourselves to actually get noticed. And I think that exaggeration of things, that is actually where the skewed view comes in place, and also gets people to say, hey, don't be such a bitch. Hey, don't be so bossy. Hey, are you okay? Because this is not how you normally behave.
Yeah. That's actually, I did an exercise with a coach on that, where I'd had a row with somebody in a work context, and I couldn't let it go. I had this kind of ruminating narrative in my mind, and I explained
it keeps in your head.
Yeah, that happens.
I kept on reliving the thing. And she asked me to kind of do a visualization in 4 stages where I relived the thing that actually happened, and I talked through, how I had lived it. And she brought me through a kind of a change of mindset and perspective. And it took 20 minutes. It wasn't a really long-winded exercise. But what I realized was that I had turned up, and I was so desperate for my competence to be recognized that I was pushy about it. I needed to kind of feel validated. I needed the people that I was talking to acknowledge me. And she said, but you know what? You're kind of assuming that they were thinking about you. Most of the time, people aren't thinking about other people. They're thinking about themselves. And when I did the visualization with her, she explained to me that, I was projecting onto the people that they were probably discrediting me, not believing me, not respecting me. She said, they probably weren't even thinking about you at all. They could have been thinking about anything else, but it most likely was not you. So it was helpful in the sense that when I know that I'm going into a situation that might be a bit tense, what I try consciously to do now is turn up and say, I'm going in with kind of the security that I am good at this topic. I don't know everything. I'm not going in bragging.
And
that
you don't have to.
Exactly. And I'm going in and kind of a change of mindset in that I turn up with a mindset of generosity. If you want to listen to me, that's fine. I'm here for you. But if you don't,
then that's also fine. Yeah.
What it means is that I don't have those ruminating conversations anymore. If the situation, goes south and there's aggression coming from the other person, that's on them.
Yeah.
I'm not entertaining it, and I don't take it anymore. And I kind of say, well, listen, I'm here to help. Come to me with your problem and I'll do my best for you. But if you don't want to listen,
then that's also fine. But then don't waste my time either.
Yeah. And I have noticed a change that I don't have that monologue in my mind anymore, where I'm going, I wish I'd said this or done that. And I kind of replay the thing over and over again, because that drains energy. So I'm learning.
Still have that.
Yeah.
I still have that. I always have that monologue like, so what did I do? Should I have said something else? Should I have done something else? Was my voice okay? Or, I'm always thinking or overthinking.
Worst case scenario, you wake up like 6 months later in the middle of the night and you think, oh, this is what I could have said.
Yeah. But
luckily I don't have that anymore, but yeah.
But one thing I have also learned is simply to speak up. When someone is, it just depends, right? Sometimes I will even tell the person, why are you attacking me? What have I done? Or if I do not have the guts to face the person, I'll report the person. I've just learned to speak up.
Yeah, that was my step one. Instead of you, Jennifer, you said, what would we change? My first step to change was taking a decision that if I thought I was going to have that monologue, then I was going to make that spur of the moment decision. I'm going to say it now, instead of saying nothing and keeping those words inside me and then having the conversation with myself. And I had to kind of consciously make that decision in a lot of situations until it became muscle memory. And now I speak up.
Well, it can be sometimes scary, especially if you're in a hierarchical mismatch, however you want to say it. Like I've had moments in previous lives, however you want to call it, where it was really scary to address those things in a way like, I feel like this. You make me feel like this in this situation. Because for one, you don't know how that person reacts. For two, you don't know if they care. And for three, you don't know if something will change. But despite those aspects, I still, like Faith said, learned to speak up. I still think it's very important also to speak up for yourself, because if you don't say anything, nothing will change.
Yeah. The weird thing for me has been, if I look back in my career, I think the first several years I was able to speak up. I really didn't fear, maybe because also I also liked what I was doing. So I always just, I felt as if, even though I was keeping appearance, I felt as if I always fitted, and I didn't really have those questionable questions in my head. But when moving into another field or another career, which is not really your comfort zone, I've found that circumstances happen when, or there have been situations when I start doubting myself. I start going back to my shell, which right now I'm trying to unlearn, but still, I think maybe just the fact that you change environments
it comes from
can also trigger that. And if you find that being the case every single time, just leave, walk out.
Yeah. I mean, it's really important. It's something that you said in our first episode, which is, kind of committing to representation and, being seen, because you can't be what you can't see. And somebody has to take the first step to being seen so that other people can follow. And there's some amazing role models in the world, the heroic ones, the Michelle Obamas, the Jacinta Arderns, who are gently, but vocally saying and showing, actually, through their policies, through their actions and their behaviors, that we can have a different type of leader and not only maintain the bar, raise the bar. You don't have to be loud and brash. You don't have to be aggressive. You don't have to crush people. On the contrary,
you don't have to attack them.
Exactly.
When
if
they
you're
go low, we go high.
Yeah. And when you're empathetic and when you're kind and you're human and you're vulnerable, and you turn up and you show that you've just had a baby and that you're being a mom at the same time as you're being a prime minister, and that it's totally okay. I think I'm hopeful when I see women like that. When you were talking in our first episode about that, I got goosebumps from that, right? Because that's super important. Taking the step, because you're taking a step that maybe other people couldn't, and other people will be able to, because you are. And it's not insignificant. It's a little step, but a big achievement.
Yeah. I recently spoke with a female leader in our organization, and wow, I was wowed. I remember leaving that conversation thinking, I wish I had met this woman before. I wish I had met this woman earlier. I wish I was actually reporting directly to this woman, because I had the feeling that the lady was listening to me, not just listening, but hearing. The lady was trying to be helpful. The lady was obviously competent, but even with all those characteristics, still had the patience to listen to me. So
Humbleness.
yeah.
Yeah. So that, I mean, that there's a lot of research that's being done at the moment, and what's interesting is I think some of the best research that's being done on this at the moment between sort of the link of women's place in leadership, the competencies that drive leadership performance.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the most prevalent research is being done by men, and I'm kind of happy
slightly
about
biased. Slightly biased. I'm sorry,
but no. Yes, but it's the most progressive research on this topic is being done by men in favor of women. That's what I mean. And that's the kind of surprising thing where there's some great research that's been done about how both men and women conflate certain attributes as being indicative of leadership performance when they absolutely aren't. So Faith mentioned confidence and charisma. There is no causal or correlation effect between those necessarily, and it's not because you are confident that you will be a bad leader, but it's not because you are confident that you will be a good leader.
Yeah.
Because you somehow get this image in your head of like the biggest gorilla on the rock then that just pumps his chest and pushes himself forward.
Yeah. So I think this is a topic that we could spend, we probably will, we'll spend a lot of time on, right? Because it's a big topic, and it's kind of emerging now in social sciences, and organizations are taking it on. Some organizations are taking it on more and more seriously. But anyway, I think we're doing what we can to influence at our level. But this was another great conversation. I love meeting up with you guys.
Definitely.
Yeah. So are we done for today?
We're good for today. We'll probably pick this up again on an episode 3, 4, or whatever. But yeah, I think we're good for today. It's a wrap, maybe.
So
ciao.
one thing still.
Okay.
For our viewers,
Yes.
if you want to participate, please let us know. You can contact us through the LinkedIn profiles or through any type of other contacting measurement. We appreciate the input. We love the feedback. Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for next time.
Please like and subscribe.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Ciao, ciao.